Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, doubting yourself, or replaying someone's words in your head without understanding why? Have you noticed how certain people always smile, always agree, always seem supportive, but somehow chaos follows wherever they go? What if the person laughing with you, praying with you, or cheering for your success is secretly feeding on your confusion and weakness? The most dangerous people in your life rarely look dangerous. They hide behind charm, humor, empathy, and familiarity. Learning how to identify who is false around you isn't about paranoia, it's about survival, clarity, and protecting your emotional, spiritual, and mental peace before silent damage turns into permanent loss. What if the tension in your relationships isn't random? What if the constant misunderstandings, betrayals, and emotional exhaustion have a hidden source you've been ignoring? Many people lose years of their lives trusting the wrong individuals simply because they didn't know what signs to look for. In this video, you'll discover the clearest signals that expose who is truly destructive in your circle, so you can stop being manipulated, regain control of your decisions, and set boundaries without guilt. Watch until the very end, because one of these signs is almost always overlooked, and missing it is exactly what allows these people to stay close and keep destroying quietly. Before we dive in, make sure you stay focused and watch closely, because recognizing these signs at the right moment can change everything. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and keep watching until the end, because one of these signals could reveal the truth about someone you never suspected. SIGN1. They smile while secretly sabotaging you. This sign is one of the most dangerous because it hides in plain sight and often disguises itself as kindness, support, and loyalty. These individuals rarely attack you openly. Instead, they operate through subtle behaviors that feel harmless at first, but slowly destabilize your confidence and direction. They smile when you speak, nod in agreement, and use reassuring words, yet their actions consistently lead to confusion, delay, or loss. Pay attention to the pattern, not the personality. For example, every time you share a new goal, they respond with encouragement followed by a realistic concern that plants doubt in your mind. They might say they believe in you, but immediately follow it with stories of failure, risk, or people who tried and didn't make it. Over time, this creates an emotional loop where excitement is always followed by fear. The sabotage doesn't feel aggressive. It feels protective. That's what makes it effective. The smile disarms you, while the outcome quietly weakens your momentum. Everyday interactions often reveal this behavior in subtle, almost invisible ways. You might mention a promotion opportunity at work, and they respond with enthusiasm, asking questions that sound supportive. Yet later, those same questions resurface as subtle warnings. Are you sure you can handle that pressure? Or I've seen people burn out fast in that position. The message is consistent beneath the surface. You're not ready. When you begin improving yourself, whether it's health, finances, or mindset, they suddenly become overly concerned, joking about your discipline, minimizing your progress, or reminding you of who you used to be. The sabotage feels familiar and safe, which makes it harder to detect. Instead of stopping you outright, they slow you down emotionally, creating hesitation and self-doubt. Over time, you start second-guessing decisions that once felt clear, and clarity now seems risky without their approval. The loop reinforces itself. Confidence sparks conversation, conversation sparks doubt. Doubt sparks stagnation, and the cycle quietly continues. What makes this sign especially destructive is the internal conflict it creates. You sense something is wrong, but you struggle to justify that feeling because the person didn't done anything obviously by. They still show up. They still claim good intentions. This is where emotional manipulation takes root. You begin questioning your intuition instead of their influence. Practical signs include feeling drained after interactions, losing motivation after sharing plans, or needing excessive reassurance before taking action. The sabotage is emotional, not logistical. They don't block the door. They convince you not to walk through it. Over time, this rewires your decision-making. You stop trusting your instincts and start outsourcing confidence. That's the real damage. And this is where the loop tightens. The more uncertain you feel, the more you seek their input, and the more control they gain without ever raising their voice. Another clear example appears in relationships where success creates discomfort instead of celebration. When something good happens to you, their reaction is delayed, muted, or oddly redirected. They may change the subject, compare your achievement to someone else's, or remind you of potential problems ahead. The smile stays, but the energy shifts. In contrast, genuine support amplifies clarity and strength. Hidden sabotage always introduces hesitation. This sign becomes even clearer when you notice consistency. One isolated comment means nothing. A repeated pattern reveals intent. Each time you feel smaller, slower, or more confused after interacting with someone, that outcome matters more than their words. The emotional loop repeats quietly until momentum disappears, and you wonder where your drive went. This behavior escalates the moment you detach, even slightly. When you stop sharing details, delay responses, or show signs of independence, their attitude subtly shifts. The smile remains, but it becomes more strategic. They may suddenly increase their attention, offer unexpected praise, or express concern that feels disproportionate to the situation. This isn't carrot's influence trying to regain access. A practical example is when you make a decision without consulting them, and they respond with excessive approval, followed by phrases like "I'm proud of you" or "I always believed in you," as if they were part of the choice. The goal is to reconnect themselves to your progress. Another example is when they frame your distance as worry for your well-being, positioning themselves as the only person who truly understands you. The sabotage adapts to your awareness, but the outcome remains identical: confusion, emotional pull, and delayed action. The loop becomes harder to detect because it now feels positive, yet it still prevents full independence. It's critical to separate this sign from normal human doubt or occasional negativity. Everyone questions, everyone worries, but not everyone consistently leaves you emotionally drained. This sign is about alignment between words and results. If someone's presence repeatedly leads to hesitation, emotional heaviness, or self-distrust, the pattern matters more than their explanations. Practical self-checks become essential here. After interacting with this person, ask yourself, do I feel mentally sharper or mentally foggy? Do I feel encouraged to act or compelled to wait? Do I trust myself more? Or do I suddenly need external validation? These internal shifts reveal far more than any conversation. Sabotage rarely feels dramatic, it feels reasonable. That's why so many people tolerate it for years. Once you recognize this pattern, awareness alone starts weakening its effect. You stop internalizing the doubt and start observing its source. As this sign settles deeper in your mind, you'll begin noticing how it connects to other behaviors that once felt unrelated. Smiling sabotage is almost never isolated. It's usually the entry point, the soft opening that makes future manipulation possible. Once doubt becomes normalized, control becomes easier. You start mistaking emotional exhaustion for maturity, hesitation for wisdom, and stagnation for patience. That's the most dangerous shift. Progress quietly slows, but because nothing dramatic happened, you struggle to identify why. This is how years are lost. The loop tightens as comfort replaces clarity. Recognizing this sign early interrupts that cycle. It creates friction, yes, but it also restores momentum. Awareness becomes a turning point, not a threat. Carry this realization forward as the video continues. Real support produces movement, clarity, and strength even when it is uncomfortable. Sabotage, no matter how friendly it looks, always results in delay and self-doubt. If someone's encouragement never leads to action, growth, or confidence, then the smile is not the message, the outcome is. This distinction will sharpen your perception as we move into the next sign, because smiling sabotage is often just the beginning. Once someone succeeds in quietly interfering with your direction, they rarely stop there. The next sign reveals how this hidden influence evolves into something far more aggressive, often at the exact moment you think you're finally breaking free. SIGN2, they lie effortlessly, even about the smallest things. This is one of the most revealing signs of a destructive person because lying is not always obvious. It often blends seamlessly into daily life. These individuals don't just lie about major events or dramatic moments. They distort small, seemingly insignificant details to control perception, manipulate trust, and create doubt. You might notice them saying they were busy all day when in reality they were tracking your plans or conversations, or insisting they never heard something you clearly told them. Over time, these small fabrications create a web of inconsistency that keeps you questioning reality, your memory, and your judgment. The loop begins when you start replaying conversations, doubting yourself, and trying to make sense of conflicting stories. This habit of lying is both strategic and habitual. It's a tool for control and subtle influence, creating a constant sense of uncertainty. If someone consistently bends the truth in ways that don't add up, it's a warning sign you cannot ignore. These lies often hide behind casual interactions, delivered with charm, humor, or a tone that feels harmless. They might claim they didn't receive your message, yet later it's clear they read it, or insist they completed a task they promised to handle, only for you to discover it wasn't done. Selective omission becomes routine. They leave out details that hold them accountable while emphasizing points that make them look helpful or blameless. As this pattern continues, you start questioning your memory, replaying interactions, and feeling the need to track every word and action meticulously. Each inconsistency adds to emotional fatigue, and the more you rely on them for clarification, the more they gain control over your perception. The smile, the casual tone, and the reassurance all mask the deeper impact, a growing internal doubt that erodes confidence. What makes this sign especially dangerous is how it slowly rewires your internal compass. These small distortions teach you to question your instincts, your interpretation of events, and your understanding of people around you. Confronting them about a repeated inconsistency often triggers indignation. "I never said that," or "you're imagining things," making you doubt yourself instead of their pattern. They may casually claim you forgot something important, even though they themselves did, turning responsibility and guilt back onto you. Every false statement, no matter how minor, becomes part of an emotional maze designed to confuse, exhaust, and weaken you. The cycle deepens because every revelation of truth provides temporary relief, only to be undermined by the next inconsistency, keeping you trapped in constant recalibration where they silently control what feels real. The danger grows when these lies intersect with your vulnerabilities. A seemingly small untruth can manipulate your emotions, influence your decisions, or subtly sabotage your opportunities. They might tell you that a friend is untrustworthy to create distrust, or exaggerate risks that don't exist to steer your choices in their favor. At times, promises and commitments are misrepresented to make you feel responsible or indebted. The smile often accompanies these distortions, making it hard to confront the pattern directly. The repetition of these behaviors creates loops of confusion. You replay interactions, question your judgment, and seek clarity, only to find more contradictions. This quiet, relentless manipulation can be exhausting because it's invisible to outsiders, leaving you to carry the mental and emotional weight alone. Recognizing this pattern requires listening beyond words and observing outcomes, repeated behaviors, and the subtle emotional shifts they trigger, allowing you to reclaim clarity and regain control over your own reality. SIGN3. They thrive on drama and create chaos around them. This type of person never lets situations remain calm for long. They have an almost instinctive drive to stir tension, conflicts, and emotional turbulence, often while appearing neutral or even helpful. They might casually drop controversial opinions in conversations, spread rumors that seem harmless at first, or exaggerate minor incidents to provoke reactions. Over time, this behavior trains everyone around them to expect unpredictability, stress, and emotional instability. For instance, in a work setting, they might subtly escalate a minor disagreement between colleagues, then act as the peacemaker, positioning themselves as essential while keeping others off balance. In personal relationships, they often retell stories with subtle exaggerations, turning small misunderstandings into significant conflicts that demand attention. The chaos serves multiple purposes. It distracts from their own flaws, manipulates perceptions, and ensures that people remain emotionally entangled with them. You might notice that after interactions with them, energy feels drained, clarity is lost, and previously straightforward situations suddenly seem complicated. The loop starts when you feel compelled to react, clarify, or intervene repeatedly, keeping you emotionally tethered while they maintain control. This person's satisfaction comes from watching tension ripple outward, feeding their sense of influence, while leaving confusion and fatigue in their wake. Understanding that the chaos is intentional, not accidental, is crucial to breaking the emotional cycle and protecting your stability. They often disguise their love of drama behind humor, charm, or even concern, which makes it hard to pinpoint their real intentions. You might see them joking about someone's mistake while inserting subtle criticisms or reinterpreting events in a way that provokes anger or defensiveness. In social circles, they might exaggerate stories to make themselves look more important or to shift attention away from their own behavior, creating mini crises that demand immediate reactions from everyone around them. In family dynamics, they could replay old conflicts or introduce gossip about distant relatives, turning ordinary interactions into emotionally charged events. Every situation becomes a stage where they can manipulate emotions, measure reactions, and maintain influence. The loop forms because your attention and emotional energy are constantly redirected toward managing their chaos, instead of focusing on your own priorities. Each interaction feels unpredictable and exhausting, yet their smile, laughter, or calm demeanor can make you question whether the tension is real or imagined. One of the most insidious aspects of this sign is the way it undermines trust and stability over time. Even when intentions seem harmless, repeated exposure to chaos trains your mind to expect disruption at every turn, eroding confidence in your own judgment and decisions. You may start anticipating conflict where none exists, replaying previous interactions to predict their next move, or hesitating to take actions that might trigger drama. Their patterns teach you to doubt your perceptions and emotional responses, reinforcing dependency on their guidance, validation, or peacemaking. The cycle keeps you emotionally engaged and mentally exhausted, ensuring that you're invested in the drama rather than your own growth. Recognizing this behavior is key to breaking the loop and reclaiming your focus, energy, and clarity. Chaos-driven individuals often escalate situations subtly, making small irritations feel monumental. They may stir arguments over trivial matters, amplify mistakes, or reinterpret conversations to create tension. In workplaces, they might email vague complaints or gossip that inflates minor issues, keeping colleagues distracted and reactive. In friendships or romantic relationships, they replay incidents to provoke jealousy, guilt, or insecurity, presenting themselves as the voice of reason or moral authority. The loop continues because your attention is continually pulled into solving problems that they created, while the underlying cause, their deliberate manipulation, remains hidden. The energy drain is cumulative. You feel compelled to clarify, defend, and manage emotional fallout repeatedly. Over time, mental and emotional bandwidth diminishes, leaving you less capable of pursuing your goals, while they maintain influence without appearing aggressive. Understanding this pattern empowers you to step back, establish boundaries, and recognize that the chaos is intentional, not accidental, which is the first step in regaining control over your emotional and mental space. SIGN4. They twist your words and manipulate conversations. This type of person rarely communicates directly or transparently. Instead, they subtly reshape your statements, exaggerate your intentions, or reframe your ideas in ways that make you doubt yourself or feel defensive. They don't have to lie outright. Often, they simply interpret your words through a lens that serves their agenda, and then present it as if it was your meaning all along. For instance, you might mention wanting more independence at work, and they later claim you don't value teamwork in front of others, sowing doubt about your character. In personal relationships, a casual comment about feeling overwhelmed can be reframed as criticism or ingratitude, making you apologize or justify yourself unnecessarily. This behavior keeps you on edge, constantly questioning whether your words will be used against you. The loop starts when you overthink your conversations, pause before speaking, or self-censor, fearing misinterpretation or conflict. Every discussion becomes a mental minefield where you second-guess your tone, phrasing, and intentions. They often pair this tactic with charm, humor, or subtle sarcasm, which masks the manipulation and makes it harder to confront. A simple question can be twisted to imply negligence or malice, while your attempts to clarify only provide more material for reinterpretation. In professional settings, they might repeat your words to superiors or colleagues with a slight shift in meaning, making you appear uncooperative, careless, or indecisive. In friendships or family, they replay private conversations in ways that spark tension, guilt, or defensiveness, leaving you exhausted and unsure of your own judgment. The energy drain is continuous because you spend more time strategizing how to communicate than actually communicating. The loop deepens as you begin measuring your words, withholding opinions, or over-explaining yourself to avoid potential distortion, which only reinforces their control over your expression and perception. Over time, this manipulation reshapes the way you interact with the world. You may hesitate to share achievements, personal goals, or even small opinions because the fear of distortion lingers. They are masters of subtle misrepresentation, which makes it difficult for outsiders to recognize what's happening. The constant mental recalibration and emotional labor quietly erodes confidence, leaving you dependent on their interpretation of reality. You may even start apologizing preemptively for things you didn't do wrong or anticipating criticism where none exists. All because prior conversations were twisted and used as leverage. This not only drains emotional energy, but also creates a cycle of self-doubt and hyper-awareness. Each interaction becomes a test of how much control they can assert over your perception, keeping you mentally and emotionally entangled. This sign often escalates when you try to set boundaries or clarify misunderstandings. They may react with exaggerated offense, deflect blame, or replay previous exchanges in a way that positions you as the aggressor. At times, they use selective memory to reinforce their narrative, conveniently forgetting details that contradict their version. Socially, they may reinterpret your statements to manipulate opinions, turning neutral parties against you. The loop is reinforced because your energy is spent defending yourself, clarifying intent, and repairing perceived damage, rather than focusing on personal goals or growth. Recognizing this pattern is crucial when words consistently become tools of control rather than communication. The manipulation is intentional. Once this awareness emerges, you can establish boundaries, limit exposure to the distortion, and reclaim authority over your own voice, thoughts, and confidence. SIGN 5. They exploit your weaknesses and insecurities. This type of person never misses an opportunity to identify vulnerabilities and use them against you, often under the guise of concern, advice, or even humor. They observe patterns in your behavior, paying close attention to what triggers anxiety, self-doubt, or guilt, and then subtly manipulate situations to intensify those feelings. For instance, if you have concerns about your career, they may casually question your choices, emphasize risks, or remind you of past mistakes, making you hesitate when pursuing opportunities. In personal relationships, they might highlight your emotional responses to provoke guilt or insecurity, twisting your empathy or kindness into something they can leverage. Over time, this constant probing teaches your mind to anticipate judgment and second-guess instincts, creating a mental loop where you rely more on their feedback than your own intuition. The loop deepens because every reaction you have becomes material they can manipulate, leaving you emotionally vulnerable and mentally exhausted. Their exploitation often masquerades as guidance or friendly concern, which makes it harder to recognize and confront. They might say things like, "I'm just trying to help you avoid mistakes," or "I only point this out because I care," while systematically steering you toward self-doubt. For example, when you express excitement about a new project, They highlight potential flaws in your plan or compare you to others who failed, planting hesitation and fear. In social settings, they might subtly embarrass you by mentioning insecurities, then frame it as a joke or constructive feedback, leaving you questioning your own reactions. Each encounter is calculated to provoke uncertainty without overt confrontation. The loop forms as you increasingly monitor your own emotions and behavior, trying to avoid triggering criticism, mockery, or manipulation. Your focus shifts from pursuing goals or expressing yourself freely to managing their reactions, which reinforces their influence over your choices and confidence. Over time, this behavior conditions you to expect judgment and magnify self-doubt. You may hesitate to share personal achievements, ambitions, or even opinions, anticipating critique or subtle undermining. They exploit this hesitation, reinforcing their role as a supportive figure who helps you navigate challenges, while simultaneously keeping you dependent and insecure. Subtle comments about your past failures, hesitations, or emotional reactions accumulate, shaping the narrative that you cannot act decisively or think clearly without their input. The loop strengthens because each time you give in, adjust, or apologize, it reinforces the idea that your instincts are unreliable and that you need them to navigate life safely. Emotional and mental energy becomes consumed by navigating this subtle pressure, leaving you less able to assert independence or clarity. This exploitation often intensifies in moments when you try to gain confidence or independence. They may frame progress as risky, cautioning against action while emphasizing potential pitfalls, or highlight insecurities just as you attempt to take a stand. In relationships, this can appear as constant reminders of past mistakes, veiled comparisons, or selective praise that only reinforces dependency. The loop persists because your mental energy is diverted into self-monitoring and strategizing around their reactions instead of moving forward with your own plans. Awareness is the first step toward breaking free. Recognizing that your insecurities are being weaponized allows you to reclaim agency. Setting boundaries, trusting your instincts, and identifying patterns of manipulation disrupts the loop and restores confidence, gradually reducing the emotional hold they have over you. SIGN 6. They gaslight you and make you question your reality. This sign is one of the most psychologically damaging because it undermines your perception of truth, memory, and judgment. Gaslighting is a slow, calculated process where someone manipulates facts, rewrites history, or denies events ever happened, all while maintaining a calm, confident demeanor. For example, you might recall a conversation clearly, only for them to insist that never happened or claim you're remembering it wrong. Over time, this creates a dangerous mental loop. You begin doubting your memory, replaying interactions obsessively, and seeking external validation to confirm what you already know internally. In workplaces, they might present your ideas as their own or reinterpret your words in meetings, leaving you embarrassed and questioning your competence. In personal relationships, they may deny promises, exaggerate your mistakes, or reinterpret your actions to make you appear unreasonable or overly sensitive. The result is constant uncertainty, where confidence erodes and dependence on their version of reality grows, keeping you tethered to their influence without realizing it. This behavior often hides behind concern or helpful explanations, making it difficult to confront directly. They might say, "I'm just trying to help you see things clearly," or "You're overreacting as usual," subtly framing your reactions as irrational. When you attempt to clarify or defend yourself, they deflect or escalate, often presenting themselves as the reasonable party while portraying you as emotional or unreliable. For instance, if you call out a repeated contradiction, they might respond with calm indignation, saying, "You always take things the wrong way," or "I never said that." You must have misunderstood. Each interaction chips away at your confidence, creating a looping cycle where you obsessively question yourself, your decisions, and even your intuition. Mental energy that should be spent on growth and action is instead consumed by replaying scenarios, second-guessing your judgment, and trying to reconcile their version of reality with your own. The insidious power of gaslighting lies in its subtlety and persistence. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be effective. Small, repeated distortions of reality are enough to create long-term dependency and self-doubt. Over time, you may start apologizing preemptively, explaining yourself unnecessarily, or avoiding certain topics entirely to prevent potential misunderstandings. They subtly condition you to anticipate criticism or denial in every interaction, which strengthens their influence while weakening your autonomy. Socially, they can manipulate others' perceptions of you, reinforcing their narrative and isolating you from support. The emotional loop intensifies because every challenge to their version of reality is met with calm, confident denial, leaving you exhausted and uncertain, yet reluctant to trust your instincts. Gaslight escalates when you attempt to assert boundaries or confront inconsistencies. They may react with indignation, shift blame, or even accuse you of creating tension or misinterpreting facts. In professional environments, they might use subtle distortions of your statements to damage credibility or create friction between colleagues. In personal life, they replay conversations or events to make you feel guilty, defensive, or unstable. The loop continues because your mental and emotional energy is constantly spent defending your perception of reality instead of pursuing your goals. Recognizing this pattern is crucial when you notice repeated distortions, denials, and subtle manipulations of your memory or perception. You can start rebuilding clarity, establishing boundaries, documenting interactions, and trusting your own instincts disrupts the gaslighting loop, empowering you to regain authority over your thoughts, emotions, and actions. SIGN7. They isolate you from support and manipulate your connections. This person works quietly to distance you from people, resources, or environments that could provide clarity, guidance, or reassurance. Isolation isn't always obvious. They rarely say, "Don't talk to them," but their actions create subtle barriers that make you rely more on them. They might criticize your friends or family under the guise of concern, say things like "they don't understand you like I do," or frame outside opinions as misguided or harmful. In professional settings, they may subtly undermine colleagues who could help you, dismiss advice from mentors, or exaggerate conflicts to create distance. Over time, this tactic strengthens their control because your perspective becomes increasingly shaped by their influence alone. You begin to question whether outside voices are trustworthy, reinforcing the mental loop of dependence on their approval and interpretation. Socially, you might notice that you increasingly avoid sharing victories, concerns, or decisions with others because you anticipate judgment, misunderstanding, or criticism. This behavior quietly erodes your autonomy while maintaining the illusion of connection through the manipulator. they often justify their actions with concern, claiming they are protecting you from bad advice, toxic people, or harmful influences. For example, when a friend points out a potential opportunity, they may downplay it or suggest hidden risks, making you feel that trusting anyone else is risky. In relationships, they might exaggerate disagreements or past mistakes of people close to you, presenting themselves as the only safe or understanding confidant. Each time you follow their guidance over independent judgment, the loop tightens, emotional dependence increases, and outside perspectives feel less reliable. You may find yourself seeking their input for minor decisions, avoiding conversations with other people, or quietly questioning whether anyone else can truly have your best interests at heart. This slow erosion of external support is intentional and systematic, allowing them to position themselves as the center of your trust, influence, and decision-making. Isolation tactics often work hand in hand with other destructive behaviors, such as gaslighting, lies, or emotional manipulation. By creating doubt about outside opinions, they make their version of reality the dominant one in your mind. For instance, they might subtly remind you of past mistakes whenever someone else offers guidance, making you question whether external advice is valid. They can also use social tension, rumors, or selective storytelling to drive wedges between you and supportive people. The loop persists because the more disconnected you become, the more their approval seems essential, and the more energy you invest in their version of reality instead of your own. Over time, relationships that once provided encouragement, guidance, or balance are replaced with dependence on someone whose goal is control rather than support. The danger of this sign lies in its subtlety. It rarely feels aggressive or overtly harmful. You may not notice the isolation until patterns are deeply entrenched. And by then, emotional and mental reliance on the manipulator has already grown. You might avoid reaching out to others, over-explain your intentions when speaking with supportive people, or silently question the motives of friends and mentors. Awareness is key to breaking the loop. Once you recognize that the isolation is intentional, you can begin to rebuild connections, trust your own judgment, and reestablish networks of support. Reconnecting with others and seeking multiple perspectives dilutes the manipulator's control, restores your autonomy, and interrupts the cycle of dependence that allows them to maintain influence over your thoughts, decisions, and emotional state. SIGN8. They drain your energy and leave you feeling depleted. This final sign is often the most visible, yet it's also one of the hardest to confront because it feels personal, not strategic. These individuals have a way of extracting mental, emotional, and sometimes physical energy from you without overt aggression. Conversations with them are rarely neutral. Even brief interactions leave you exhausted, overwhelmed, or anxious. They dominate discussions, steer topics toward conflict or negativity, and subtly shift attention to their needs while minimizing yours. For instance, you may notice that after a meeting, a phone call, or even a casual encounter, your motivation diminishes, clarity fades, and you replay the interaction repeatedly in your mind, trying to understand what went wrong. Social situations with them often feel like emotional tug-of-wars. They take, push, provoke, and leave you struggling to regain balance. The loop forms because you invest energy trying to respond appropriately, manage their moods, or repair subtle disruptions, while your own priorities get pushed aside. Over time, Repeated exposure erodes resilience, self-confidence, and mental clarity. They often disguise this energy drain behind charm, humor, or friendliness, which makes it difficult to identify the true cause. For example, they might start a conversation with excitement and attention, only to gradually shift the focus toward complaints, criticisms, or issues designed to provoke guilt or tension. In professional environments, they might monopolize meetings with drama or distraction, leaving others frustrated and mentally fatigued. In personal life, they can dominate interactions, complain repeatedly, or rehash conflicts that should have ended long ago, leaving you emotionally spent. The pattern is subtle. They rarely appear aggressive or intentionally harmful, yet the outcome is consistent pure energy, motivation, and mental bandwidth are slowly depleted. The loop is reinforced because you attempt to compensate, over-explain, or manage their mood, creating a cycle of exhaustion and silent manipulation. One of the most difficult aspects of this behavior is that it creates guilt or self-blame. You may feel responsible for their emotions, pressured to respond, or compelled to help them feel better. This is intentional. The manipulator feeds off your attention, empathy, and effort, reinforcing the emotional loop. For instance, when you try to disengage, they may use subtle guilt, frustration, or emotional appeals to pull you back in. Every interaction becomes a test of stamina, patience, and emotional endurance, making it hard to maintain focus on your own goals. Over time, your energy depletion can feel normal, even unavoidable. Because repeated exposure rewires your emotional responses and keeps you tethered to their needs rather than your own. Recognizing this sign is essential to reclaiming balance and autonomy. The key is to observe the emotional outcome of interactions rather than just the behavior itself. If someone consistently leaves you drained, anxious, or mentally exhausted, it doesn't matter how charming or apologetic they appear. The effect on your energy is the message. Once you notice the pattern, it's possible to set boundaries, limit exposure, and protect your mental and emotional resources. Prioritizing your own energy and well-being disrupts the loop, reduces dependency, and restores clarity, allowing you to focus on your own goals and relationships with people who contribute positively to your life rather than drain it. Recognizing energy drain as intentional, not accidental, is the first step to ending the cycle of manipulation and reclaiming control over your emotional and mental state. Now that you've seen the 8 signs of someone toxic in your life: smiling while sabotaging you, lying effortlessly, thriving on drama, twisting your words, exploiting your weaknesses, gaslighting, isolating you, and draining your energy, you have the awareness to recognize these patterns before they take control. Remember, these behaviors are rarely dramatic. They operate quietly, slowly reshaping your reality, eroding confidence, and creating loops of dependence that are easy to overlook. Awareness is your first line of defense, and identifying these signs gives you the power to protect your mind, your heart, and your energy. Start noticing patterns, trusting your instincts, and observing outcomes rather than intentions. The more attuned you become, the less influence destructive people will have over your life. If this video opened your eyes to behaviors you've tolerated or overlooked, take action now. Set boundaries, distance yourself where necessary, and surround yourself with people who genuinely support and uplift you. Don't allow subtle manipulation, lies, or emotional drain to define your life. Share this video with someone you care about who might need to see these signs. Subscribe for more guidance on spotting toxic relationships. And keep watching the channel to strengthen your awareness and resilience. Your clarity, energy, and peace of mind are worth protecting. And the first step is recognizing who truly deserves your trust.